Hey, let's make this little stone wall. I'm going to start off by taking my foam and cutting it down to 1 inch by 3 inch little pieces. Okay, just like with the hedgerows, I want to sort of round these off a little bit. I don't want them to have really super crisp, sharp lines. I don't have to take off much, just a very little bit. I want to end up with something like this. Leave it flat on the bottom, and I end up with sort of this shape here. And I have forgotten to do my dryer sheet. Thus I have all this static. I'm going to go with my egg carton stone material for this project. All right, as you've seen me do before, I just take that cardboard and I start to rip it into rock shapes. I'll just tear up a ridiculous amount of these, vary the sizes, make some of them sort of oblong, you know, make them odd shapes, make it something like this. Okay, I'm just gonna start gluing these stones on. You don't need to base coat this ahead of time. We're gonna base coat the whole thing once it's all glued together, but I'll just put a little bit of hot glue and stick the stone on there. More realistic if the stones kind of bend around instead of making rows right to the edges. Have a stone. Make sure one of these pieces is bent around the edge, and just keep adding them and puzzle them in there, just like I've done before with the egg carton stone. Just puzzle it all in and cover the whole surface, except for the bottom, of course. There, I've covered in all of my egg carton stone. Now I'm just going to use my black Mod Podge to base coat everything. Get a very thorough covering with this. This will seal all of that cardboard, make it very rigid so that it won't peel or flake. Get full coverage with the base, with the black Mod Podge base coat. You could just use black paint, but again, this is really, the Mod Podge in this mix is really going to harden and seal all of this soft cardboard that we have here. Make sure you don't have, in my case, yellow of the egg carton showing through. I want this to be completely covered, just because it'll be harder to cover that up later if it's standing out. Let that dry. I'm going to go with like a blue-black base on this. So I'll start off with a little bit of the Craft Smart Navy, add a little bit of the Craft Smart Black to that, just a touch to darken that up. A little black goes a very long way, so be careful. So that's what I want, like a midnight blue, which you can buy, but you know, I like to mix my own colors a lot of the time, just so I can get the exact tones that I want. Plus, in the long run, it's a little less expensive just to add black to a few basic colors. And I don't want to bury this in this color. I want to just sort of overbrush in there. You paint this however you'd like, though. This is just what I'm going with. There are many different ways. I could go with a red stone or lots of different kinds of stone palettes. So I'm just going with something a little on the blue side for this. But as always, play and experiment. For my sort of middle tone, I'm just going to take some Craft Smart Gray and mix it in with that color I already have there to lighten it up. So same color, just a lighter version of that. And I'll do some relatively dry overbrushing. I just want to hit all of the edges of things. This isn't changing it a lot. It's just starting to pick up those edges on those little stones. Now I'll do a little overbrush of just gray. Almost a dry brush here. And you guessed it, suede for the dry brush. And there's that. I like it. I like it. Lastly, I want to do a little flocking around the base of the wall there. Stipple on some glue all around just the base of the wall, maybe going up the corners a little bit. Press on my flocking. Same flocking I always use. Really right at the bottom, do like a second layer of flocking, really lay on the glue kind of heavy to give it a little bit more, make it a little chunkier, if you will, down there right at the bottom. So that when this sits on the terrain, it really disguises that seam at the bottom. I just hold a pinch of the flocking in my hand and kind of touch it to the glue and press it in while I do that. Go on top of that layer of flocking right at the very bottom and really put on a pretty heavy amount of glue. Try to keep the bottom of it clean so it sits nice and flat. Let's put it in the terrain and see what we have. And there we have a very simple little stone wall. You can make a whole bunch of these and create all kinds of garden walls. But a really easy piece of scatter, especially to mix in with these hedgerows that we made yesterday. Something else that can add a little interest to this wall, the dollar store has these bags of these kinds of rocks. You get the white ones. I have this paint that I used for my overbrush. I'm just going to take some of those rocks and just throw them in that paint and give them a little mix around here. Get them all covered in that. Pick them out and throw them on this paper towel here. And then I will just dab off most of that paint. I've got something like this. By doing this, it kind of acts like a wash of that color. So I'm just staining the rock with it. And I'm going to just hot glue these on to the top of my wall. I don't know if you've ever seen anything like this on old stone walls, but sometimes you'll see sharp rocks and even pottery and glass. And it sort of acts like an archaic barbed wire. It's meant to deter intruders from climbing and jumping over your walls. So it's kind of like an ancient security measure, if you will. And these rocks like this sort of take on, you sort of look a bit like, well, not glass, but you know that they have a lot of quartz in them, which is often what you see these stones being used for. Farmers would find that quartz-based rock in their field and use it because it's sharp, even chip it to points. And you have something like that, which I think is very cool. Just an added little piece that you can do to punch up the interest of these simple little walls. There you go.